Year 10. When analysing Macbeth for your controlled assessment, you must pay close attention to Shakespeare's use of language. Shakespeare presents Lady Macbeth in a number of different ways, but nothing is more powerful than his use of language. In her opening scenes, Act 1, Scene 5, particularly in Act 1, Scene 7, when she is her most dominant, she speaks in verse. Shakespeare makes her speak in verse to present her as a dominant, powerful character. However, as her power in the play diminishes, and particularly in Act 5, Scene 1, which is the infamous sleepwalking scene, she speaks in prose. By speaking in prose, Shakespeare shows us that Lady Macbeth has lost all of her power. Year 10, if we look more closely at Lady Macbeth's first appearance in Shakespeare's play, it is Act 1, Scene 5. We see that she is reading a letter from Macbeth, in which he tells her that the three witches have prophesied that he is going to become the king. Immediately, we see Lady Macbeth sees the opportunity to build on the witch's information. Clearly, she is an ambitious character and wants to be the Queen of Scotland. In order to manipulate Macbeth, she immediately starts to belittle his manhood. When she says, too full of the milk of human kindness, this metaphor shows us that she believes that her husband Macbeth is too nice and too gentle to ever commit regicide, the killing of the king. Not only is she presented as being very dominant and persuasive and manipulative, but clearly she is slightly disturbed in terms of the imagery she uses. The quotation, the raven himself is hoarse, that croaks the fatal entrance of Duncan. The imagery she uses here are all pessimistic. Raven, the bird, the raven, has connotations of death. Fateful, again, connotations of death. She is already plotting in her mind the death of the king. Once again, if we pay close attention to Lady Macbeth's language, particularly in the opening scenes of Act 1, Scene 5 and Act 1, Scene 7, she continues to speak in metaphor. Her most famous metaphor is, look like the time, bear welcome in our eye, your hand, your tongue, look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent under it. Obviously, she is telling Macbeth that when the king comes to stay with them, that he should appear to be nice and welcoming, but underneath that guise, he actually is going to be the slippery, sly serpent that will kill him. She is promoting slyness here, and she clearly is two-faced. The very definition of metaphor is when something is described as being something else. This very device embodies all that Lady Macbeth is. She is vindictive. She is sly. She is putting on a facade in front of the king and his people. So metaphor is a key language device. If you are looking for a B grade, an A grade, an A star grade in terms of your controlled assessment, you must comment on metaphor and why Lady Macbeth speaks in metaphor. All right? Year 10, if you're looking for a Band 5 answer, which is the A and the A star grade, you should mention context. Context relates to Lady Macbeth being a female, and obviously because you've studied Shakespeare in the past, the roles of females during that period of time. Lady Macbeth goes against all of the preconceptions and all of the stereotypes associated with women at the time Shakespeare was writing, because she is very masculine. When I say that, I mean she is ambitious, and as we've already discussed, very dominant. Therefore, because she is conflicted between masculine and feminine ideals, particularly when she says in Act 1, Scene 5, unsex me here, she goes against everything the Elizabethan society expected. Elizabethan society expected women to be maternal, submissive, not to have any power, not really to have a voice in society. Lady Macbeth does suppress her femininity, as I've said before, when she says unsex me here. She's talking about the milk being drained from her breasts. She is obsessive about becoming the queen and wanting that role, and in that way she defies the preconceptions of Elizabethan society and goes against everything we would expect because she is so dominant. Toward the end of Act 1, Scene 5 as well, we once again see Lady Macbeth's power. Again, when I say power, I mean her ability to manipulate language. Obviously, Macbeth has come home from war. She shows no emotion toward him. Rather, she greets him in the same way the witches did when they call him the Thane of Glamis and the Thane of Cawdor. Towards the end of Act 1, Scene 5, when she has decided that they are going to kill the king, she begins to speak in double meanings, and her language is overloaded with euphemism. The quotations toward the end of that act that you want to take note of are business, dispatch, and fed. All three of those words can be taken to mean something else. So, for instance, business could mean the fact that the king's coming to stay. Dispatch could mean that they have to provide for him. Fed again could mean, the basic meaning of fed, we've got to feed the king because he's going to be our guest. However, the secondary meaning to those words in the context of what she is saying is that they are going to kill him and that they are going to get rid of him. By speaking very subtly in double meanings and in euphemisms like this, she allows herself to not feel responsible, even though this is her idea. It also allows her to relinquish the guilt. This is ironic, however, because ultimately it is the guilt that destroys her mentally. In addition, if you're looking for your Band 5 answer, you do need to mention the iambic pentameter. It's one of Shakespeare's key devices. The iambic pentameter is 10 syllables to a line, and it has an up and down rhythm where the syllables are stressed and unstressed, stressed and unstressed. Naturally, Lady Macbeth in her opening scenes speaks in the iambic pentameter because it embodies her power and tells the audience that she is a character who is dominant and who we should pay attention to. Now, you can read the iambic pentameter in many ways. My interpretation of it is that the up and down rhythm, because it alters and goes up and down and back and forth, I think that embodies and mirrors her mental state and her emotional state, because at the bottom of everything, she is very confused. Yes, she wants to be the queen, but she doesn't want to feel guilty. And unfortunately, in this place, she can't have it both ways. So this constantly changing rhythm, I think, mirrors her emotional state, but also her mental confusion about the events that are going to take place, which is ultimately the death of the king. As the play progresses and we arrive at the persuasion scene, obviously pivotal to the whole play because this hinges on whether or not the king will be killed. Once again, we see Lady Macbeth's language and how powerful she is with the words she chooses to use. This is the moment when she finally manipulates her husband into agreeing to the murder. She speaks in antithesis. Antithesis are contrasting terms. So, for instance, I've put a list of quotations there: feared, valour, coward, grief, love. Once again, her language shows us that she is unstable and torn between the killing of the king and not killing the king. In addition, she uses the pronoun you a lot. Now, if you read back the interaction between Lady Macbeth and Macbeth, the repetition of you allows her to play on his conscience. Ultimately, she makes him feel guilty. She makes him feel as if he is responsible for her becoming the queen and himself becoming the king. He almost forgets that the witches have prophesied that fate will make him the king, and he goes along with his wife's wishes, really, which is that she wants the power. As we know from Act 1, Scene 5, she thinks Macbeth is too soft. So by playing on his manhood in Act 1, Scene 5, by speaking subtly in euphemism at the end of Act 1, Scene 5, and then ultimately being ridiculously direct and persuasive in Act 1, Scene 7, she succeeds. in persuading her husband to commit regicide. And finally, the end of her reign in the play is Act 5, Scene 1, which is the sleepwalking scene. We are presented with a Lady Macbeth who we just don't recognise. She is hallucinating, she is delusional, she sees blood on her hands. Again, that is a mirror image, it's symbolic of her guilt. And she's wandering around and she's rambling. And as I said earlier, she is speaking in prose. And we know that this means she has lost all of her power. Once she has persuaded Macbeth to kill the king, she has no role in the play anymore. He doesn't need her. And ultimately, the guilt of killing the king and the fact that she's a pointless character now leads to this ending for her. The famous quote I've put there is "out damn spot." You can use "to bed, to bed, to bed." The repetition of "to bed" is a metaphor for her death. This is the last time in the play we will see Lady Macbeth, and what a fall from grace she has suffered. This powerful, manipulative, dominant female from Act 1, Scene 5 and Act 1, Scene 7 has been replaced with a weak, feeble, rambling woman who clearly has lost the plot. She has gone crazy, if you like. In your essay, naturally, you will have to express that in standard English. But she is speaking in flat prose. She has lost all of her power. She has lost her role in the play.